A friend of ours is having trouble with the stitch size dial on his Brother River. The size of stitches has suddenly become unpredictable based on his previous experience and not consistent. So here's what can go wrong and how to address it. This is actually something that can happen and does happen fairly often, so we think that others may benefit from knowing the same things he needs to know.
What we're looking for is to get these arms so that we can see that they are moving, and you can see this is changing position and the one on the other side is doing the same thing. They basically move away from and toward this rail. And let me remind you that this part of both of them is spring loaded. If that spring load is not nice and smooth and quick, that can change the stitch size or the tension that you're getting. And in just a second, what we'll do is take the cover off and show you how the dial works. Here we are with disassembly tips. If you'll notice, silver screw, silver screw, silver screw, gold, gold, and on this end, gold, gold. So it's always the odd screws that take your cover off. And if you'll notice, this screw has a place for a slot or a cross point. And these little gold screws, they're brass colored, only take a cross point screwdriver. So if we take these out, and with this particular river carriage, keep a firm grip on that cover. You've got springs underneath here, and these little knobs will pop up and fall off. You don't want that to happen because it takes a lot more experience to put those back in correctly. I'll show you when we get in there. And we're going to lift the cover off. I want you to watch what happens to this slide. It'll fall right out. So put a finger there and a finger here and lift your cover. And these are the knobs I'm telling you about. Here's your indicator for the knob position. But these two knobs will interchange. Their bases are not the same. So you have to make sure these guys don't get away from you. See, right now, it'll just spin round and round. It does nothing until it's under its cover and it knows its position. Now we're going to start with the dial again. See the movement we're getting here? That must be what you get. Now,
Go.
all right, this post goes in this track. If you'll notice, it's a spiraled out track. That's what moves this into an out farther away from the center post or closer to the center post position. Then you've got another track out here, and that's your clicking sound, is this spring traveling in this track. So for this to not work correctly, you'll notice this can be loose, this nut can be loose, this nut can be loose. This post can actually be broken, though it is steel, it's not plastic, like many of them. This circlip could come off, and that would let the dial drop too far down the center post. That circlip is designed to stop it. And you see how I rotated it until I got it to click into place.
Yeah, it doesn't just automatically engage, is what you're saying, right?
That's right. But if you'll notice, that would come off with the cover on if it weren't for this edge. So if someone mistakenly, for some reason, took this off.
Wait, I'm following you and you're jumping around.
If for some reason someone took the cover off, took the dial off, put the cover back on, you see the dial won't go deep enough to engage your stitch size control.
The majority of the people that I know have had their machines shipped to them at some point, or the machines have been through a move in some way. Could that disrupt any of this positioning?
Yes, it could. Someone going in to do some cleaning would do exactly as I said, possibly get the dial on wrong. Now, let me show you the other thing. This is the spring-loaded part of that flipper that I was showing you underneath there.
Could you lose or break a spring?
You could. A spring can pop off because these guys have to work pretty fast when you're knitting.
Wait, Joe, I wasn't close enough to see you.
All right, I'll use this one. these guys have to move pretty fast, about like what I'm doing now, when you're going back and forth across your ribber. So if one of the ends of the spring broke, or if it flipped off, then, or if it's got crud in it like yours does, but that would also...
This is not my crud. This is the previous owner's crud.
That's right. But here, I'll show you once again with the bottom. I did what I told you not to do.
You sure did.
That's all right. This is me. But these are the flippers that are spring-loaded that we just looked at from the top. That must be very quick. Now, a lot of times we can see you'll get debris in here and old grease. If it slows that flipper down, it's not going to behave, and your stitch size won't stay consistent. But these are your movable parts of the flipper, and these are your spring-loaded parts of the track control that changes the size of the stitch.
I think I counted about 4 reasons that the stitch dial might not correctly predict the stitch size.
Yes, it could be improperly seated, could be seated not low enough. Either one of these springs could have gotten disconnected, and of course it may need some lubrication. Here, right, lets you see this old grease.
I got this ribber in good shape from an estate sale, and that's absolutely classic.
It is. Now, reassembling, you have to keep a finger on the PR ends, and if you'll notice, you see why. It'll just completely come out of there. So you put it in a position where you can keep a hand on it. Now, I will tell you this. On this side, that slot has to go over this lever. That's what controls it. There's a tapered top to that lever, and you see that lever just goes back and forth all on its own. That tapered top goes into this slot. So when this slide moves, it moves this lever too. This one's not like that one. This one will stay put. This one won't. So you got to keep a finger on this one, and you got to make
where your right hand is now, next to PR and N.
Yes. All right, we're putting the cover on. We don't know if we're down far enough, so we look up in here, right there. There's the slot, that's the tang, and if I move it manually, then it goes into place.
So it's seated correctly now.
Yes.
And now we're reinstalling the gold screws, right?
Yes.
And that's pretty simple, so we'll leave it here.
Right.